All right, let's dive right into this explainer and explore a fascinating and honestly kind of unsettling paradox right at the heart of our legal system. Today, we're unpacking the massive gap between the incredibly lucrative societal incentives designed to encourage marriage and the surprisingly harsh, wealth-fracturing realities of modern divorce. It's a deep dive into how family law, the tax code, and the legal industry all crash together when a lifelong promise breaks down. Take a look at this. The swan, right? It's pretty much the universal symbol of lifelong fidelity. When couples tie the knot, we all expect the white swan of unity. But what happens when that expectation is met by a black swan? An unpredictable, highly disruptive event that completely shatters the established framework. As you'll see, that's actually the perfect visual metaphor for the sudden legal asset slaughter that can crack open a carefully built marital estate. Now, to really wrap our heads around the state's role in all this, we've got to establish some baselines about how relationships are legally viewed. Our source texts point out a really interesting debate around civil rights flags. Basically, they ask why innate sexual orientations require advocacy and representation while monogamy doesn't. Well, the answer is that monogamy doesn't really need a civil rights campaign because it's already the heavily protected, dominant default standard. Family law and tax structures are explicitly built from the ground up to recognize and reward exclusive two-partner relationships. And why does this matter to us? Because monogamy isn't just some romantic ideal. It's a highly protected, state-sponsored economic vehicle. So let's move into our first major theme, Section 1, incentivizing the union, and how the state builds this white swan ideal. You see, the state doesn't just sit back and passively accept two-person unions. It actively pushes couples to bind their fortunes together. And how does it do that? By dangling a suite of seriously lucrative VIP perks. We're talking about access to lower joint tax brackets, automatic inheritance rights, unified estate tax limits, and shared health insurance. These are state-sanctioned privileges that are exclusively restricted to a single pair. And here is the crucial takeaway. These incentives act like a giant financial funnel. The system actively relies on our natural urges to pair up, and it heavily rewards us for doing exactly that. By offering these tax breaks and legal protections, the state is essentially encouraging couples to pool their resources and build a massive, concentrated pile of capital. The resulting estate is usually way larger and much more complex than what two single individuals would ever accumulate on their own. Which brings us to Section 2, Fattening the Marital Pig. Now, that sounds a bit blunt, right? But legal scholars and critics point to this very real concept of fattening the pig. Essentially, this is a scenario where a system is heavily optimized to encourage people to grow an estate to its absolute maximum size. The state watches this marital wealth balloon over decades, which effectively sets a very, very lucrative stage for professional middlemen. Think lawyers, tax specialists, and actuaries to profit immensely when it's time for the final payout. To put this into perspective and see exactly how the tax code drives this, just look at real estate capital gains exemptions. If you're a married couple filing jointly, you get a massive $500,000 exemption on the profit from selling your primary home. But if you divorce, bam, that exclusion instantly gets slashed in half to $250,000 per person. So, if a separating couple owns a highly appreciated home, they are staring down a massive financial tax cliff. The fear of that heavy penalty literally traps them, forcing them to hire specialized real estate attorneys and forensic appraisers just to engineer a safe exit without losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's not just real estate. We see this illusion of safety all over the tax code, actively feeding the legal industry. Take Section 1041. It promises tax-free transfers between divorcing spouses. But honestly, it's a total illusion. The receiver just inherits the original hidden tax burden. I mean, $1 million stock portfolio with heavy capital gains is absolutely not equal to $1 million in cold hard cash. Untangling that mess, you're going to need expensive CPAs. Even splitting a retirement account requires a highly complex premium-priced legal document called a Q-draw, just to avoid immediate IRS penalties. So this all leads us to a pretty pivotal question for today's explainer. What actually happens when the vows of until death do us part smash head-on into the fragile reality of modern family law? Let's get into Section 3, the Black Swan disruption. Here's the twist. While the state loves protecting the legal structure of a two-person union for tax purposes, our sources point out that it does not actually protect the endurance of the relationship itself. The shift to no-fault divorce essentially means the marriage is a highly fragile contract that is subject to unilateral dissolution. A spouse can just leave for any reason. This fundamentally turns what was supposedly a permanent union into a temporary partnership. It instantly cracks open the vulnerable pen of the couple's accumulated wealth, and nobody even needs to prove wrongdoing to do it. Observers draw a really fascinating historical parallel here to kings like Henry VIII. They didn't just get annulments on a whim because they were bored. No, they used them as deliberate tools of statecraft to violently fracture estates, strip away dowries, and consolidate wealth right back to the state and legal authorities. Which brings us to our final act, Section 4, the legal harvest, or slaughtering the pig. Just like those old royal decrees, the modern marital breakdown triggers a massive redistribution of wealth. The modern equivalent of the executioner's axe is the forced liquidation of stocks, homes, and retirement accounts. Every single movement triggers a tax event or a legal toll. Lawyers who are paid via hourly billing are structurally incentivized to escalate the conflict. The sources note how discovery motions are often completely manufactured just to drain the estate. Even child custody is commodified. Lawyers routinely bill tens of thousands of dollars, litigating over exactly 183 overnight stays, simply because crossing that single-day threshold unlocks the lucrative head of household tax status. It is literally high-stakes tax engineering masquerading as family law. Now you might be wondering, aren't there easier ways to handle this? Well, critics argue that the legal machine actively fights off cheap automated alternatives. Simple things like statutory trusts or digital transfer on death designations already exist. They could allow wealth to transfer automatically for just a few bucks, entirely bypassing probate and family courts. But here's the catch. A clean, automated process leaves no wealth for the legal machine to harvest. According to the critique, the system relies on complexity, ambiguity, and dragged-out timelines to maintain its own financial hygiene. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought. If the state meticulously rewards couples for building a massive, unified pool of wealth, yet designs a legal exit that strictly guarantees immense profits for its own professional class through the sheer friction of separation, who is modern family law actually protecting? The family or the system itself? It's a striking perspective on the mechanics of modern relationships, and one that for sure makes you look at the fine print just a little bit differently.